This is the newly redesigned Sigma 24mm F1.4 art lens for the Sony full-frame E-mount cameras. And actually, Sigma just dropped two new lenses today, this and the 20mm F1.4 art, which is also newly redesigned for the Sony E-mount. And that lens will be in a separate video, so make sure you cue that one up. So let me go ahead and give you the Jason Vong Quickie Wiki. First off, do not buy the wrong 24mm lens. Sigma has a version that was designed for DSLR and later re-released converted copies to fit the Sony E-mount. While optically it was fine, autofocus performance was definitely not up to snuff. The new redesigned one not only has better autofocus performance, it is also smaller and lighter compared to the DSLR version. 510 grams versus 665. And the best way to tell them apart is that the new one has an aperture ring, while the old one has a focus distance indicator right dead at the center. For this new mirrorless version, they also managed to make the barrel size smaller. The filter thread size is now 72mm versus 77 from before. However, most Sony users will be comparing this to the 24G Master F1.4, and the Sony version is still smaller and lighter. 67mm filter thread size and only at 445 grams. But the price is gonna be the biggest separator between the two. $800 versus $1,400, almost half the cost with the Sigma. And performance-wise, I actually found the Sigma to be quite comparable to the Sony. The Sony still has a slight edge in autofocus and slightly higher image quality, and of course, still winning at that size and weight. But for the price, I think most people would be able to turn a blind eye and go for the Sigma. So let's start off with the look and feel first, and this feels really good in the hands for an f1.4 lens. When attached to a body, it just feels balanced, not so much front drag whatsoever. Immediately, the biggest distinction from the previous iteration is the aperture ring, which we are now seeing more commonly in mirrorless lenses. There's a toggle that makes it click or clickless, and an aperture lock button to prevent getting in or out of A mode. Being an A on the ring means you just control the aperture on the camera. Off to the side, we have an autofocus manual focus toggle and a focus hold button, which again are very common nowadays. But what's new is that Sigma's including this MFL toggle, which stands for manual focus lock. And this is helpful when you need to switch to manual and lock focus. Putting MFL on lock prevents accidental nudges to the focus ring, risking a shift in focus. Particularly useful for Astro if you accidentally bump into your camera in the dark. The front does take a 72mm size filter, but Sigma is also allowing the option for rear ones as well, and they've included a filter cutout template in the box. Now, for my gimbal operators, you will want to use stronger gimbals like the Zhiyun Weibo 3 or the DJI RS3 if you want the most stable results and the full range of motions when using this lens. Moving on, let's talk performance. Starting off with my famous Jason Vong video autofocus test, we got two A7 IVs and we're using the Sony 24G Master F1.4 as our base and control test lens. Both lenses rack focuses smoothly and gradually. No stuttering, no awkward hiccups like we've seen from the DSLR converted art lenses in the past. Plus, both lenses autofocus very silently as well. Now, doing my one and only running exercise of the year, I would say they both performed about the same. Maybe the Sony 24G Master might have the upper hand, especially when I got really close to the setups, but again, it's not very apparent, not as apparent as the Sony 20G versus the new Sigma 20 Art in my other video. And you'll see what I mean when you check out that video. The Sony 20G just kept up insanely well because it has the more up-to-date focus motor, the extreme dynamic linear motor, whereas the 24G Master still uses the old direct drive supersonic motor, which again makes a little sense because the 24G Master did come out around 2018, I believe, and the Sony 20G came out around 2020. With that said, just wow, the Sigma 24mm is quite on par in terms of video autofocus performance. Moving on to manual focus. The Sony 24G Master is quite sensitive and has very fine control if you need to do any sort of manual rack focusing. The Sigma, on the other hand, though, has a much larger focus throw, and you'll be twisting that focus barrel a lot if you want to see any changes. However, I did notice if you turn too slow, the focus on the Sigma will not change. Now, for my video users, both lenses will have some crazy focus breathing, and that's to be expected since these lenses are designed more for photography and hybrid creators in mind, rather than just pure cinematography. Now, the Sony 24G Master is a supported lens if you're using a Sony camera with breathing compensation, which will minimize the noticeability of breathing, and you'll find that in the lens compensation section in the menu. Speaking of which, Sigma does recommend having all of these lens compensation turned on, and they should be by default. Which brings us to image quality. As expected from the Art series, more of that contrasted look straight out of camera, incredibly sharp, really nice bokeh, especially at f1.4, you get that smooth glass look. And the balls, the bokeh balls, because it's more contrasted with the Sigma, the outermost rings of those balls are more defined, whereas the bokeh balls on the Sony are more blended. Nothing wrong with that, it would just be up to personal preferences. Now, the vignetting is quite apparent at f1.4, but nothing a Lightroom profile won't fix once it becomes available. When compared to the Sony 24G Master, the Sony does exhibit less of that vignetting and slightly better corner sharpness. Keep in mind, these are all with lens compensation features turned on for both lenses. No crazy distortion from either lenses, and both exhibit nice starburst flares at the closer apertures. Overall, if you've been a fan of Sigma art lenses, there is really nothing new in terms of image quality. It's what you've come to know and love. But if you're new personally, rest assured, for almost half the cost, the Sigma might be worth taking a look at. So, price. The new Sigma Art 24mm F1.4 will be $799 and will be available late August 2022. And the price is pretty right up there with their usual art lenses. The alternative would be the Sony 24G Master F1.4 for $1,400. Now, if you already own the 24G Master like I do, the mileage that we got out of it by now far exceeded its worth. I don't regret it. I value the smaller and lighter form factor, and I would choose this lens over again, no problem. On my channel, I've always said I will gladly pay more for something smaller and lighter over cheaper and heavier alternatives. However, honestly, if you don't already have the G Master, it's gonna be hard to sway you to it because of that pricing difference. So if you're in the market for a 24 f1.4, take a look at the Sigma. And if you need reasons why you should get a 24mm lens, then check out my top 8 reasons linked right up here. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy the work that I do and want to support the channel, just simply stick around and listen to what my sponsor Squarespace has to say. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to create beautiful websites. No coding knowledge whatsoever. Perfect for people like me because I just want to make YouTube videos for you guys and not have to worry about coding my entire website. Simply just select one of their templates to get started. Every aspect is easily customizable with their drag and drop feature. Whether you're in need of a portfolio, an e-commerce store, or even a simple blog, design it with Squarespace. Use my link down below to test it out, and when you're ready to launch your first website or domain, use my code JASONVONG to save 10% off. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.